So finally, we have seen gameplay for Mafia: The Old Country, and this is a question that a lot of people had, and rather than getting 10 seconds, 30 seconds, or a minute of gameplay, we've got 9 whole minutes of gameplay from Hangar 13 and the whole team working on Mafia: The Old Country. Now, this isn't a sponsored video, not at all associated with Mafia, this is just my honest thoughts. And I'm pleased to say that 90% of this looks incredible, and we'll go through some of the details, but I do have a couple of slight concerns, and we'll get into those. So all of this gameplay is from chapter 5 of Mafia: The Old Country, so it's from a bit later on in the game. Now, the first thing that stood out to me is the audio mixing and mastering, and let me just play you a clip.
I want to speak with you about my daughter. When Isabella became involved, however.
So as you can hear, the audio actually feels real, and there's loads of techniques that they've used to help make this sound more convincing. Firstly, we have the panning. The panning is accurate to where you're positioned within that 3D space. But secondly, the compression on the audio. It doesn't feel overly compressed, but it feels like people are talking right next to your ears, and it's very, very audibly nice to listen to. Now, the next thing I want to point out is that the textures look amazing. Obviously, we can tell that this is the current gen / next gen version of gaming. There are a few little drawbacks which we will get to later, but overall the textures, quality, aesthetics and lighting of this game genuinely look beautiful. It gives you that kind of Red Dead Redemption 2 vibe. When I first played Red Dead, I looked at that game thinking, wow, this looks incredible, and I think this is the only game since, other than maybe Cyberpunk and a few others, where I've looked at it and gone, wow, this looks like a real convincing environment. Now, the next thing is the graphics. So in the cutscenes, the graphics do look incredible, and we of course saw that from the first trailer. Gameplay does look really good, not as good, but we will get to that later in the video. The next thing I want to talk about is the pacing. So more recently, in the past few years, we've started to see cutscenes run a bit faster. We've started to see that games developers are almost scared of leaving space in dialogue for games. And the main reason for this is because retention. Everyone now has the attention span of a 5-year-old, and it's basically, we're entering an era of TikTok brain rot gaming. The way that this story is conveyed, and obviously we're only seeing 9 minutes of footage and obviously a minute or two of cutscenes, but the way that the pacing feels like it's being pushed throughout this, it doesn't feel like we're being rushed along the story. And that's something I absolutely love about story-driven games. Linear story games are awesome, but if you're going to give me a linear story, get that pacing right. And in this, I feel like we're getting a healthy balance from this 9 minutes of gameplay and cutscenes. Now, the next thing to note is that this is running at 60 frames per second. Now, I do want to say we have no intimation whether this is running on the PlayStation 5 Pro, whether it's running on a PS5, an Xbox, or PC. I'm going to assume this is running on a PC, and I'm going to assume maybe the console versions at 30 frames per second, base console versions. I'm not 100% sure. We don't actually have any information on that spec, and I haven't seen anything about it online. I could be entirely wrong about that. You can let me know. But I would assume that this is being captured on a PC, just looking at how smooth it is, but also how fast some of the gameplay is, like the panning from different targets. It seems a bit quicker on this, so I'm going to assume this is all being captured on a PC. Please though, correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. But performance-wise, it looks good. It looks smooth. There's a couple of seconds where there's a little bit of dropout, but nothing that's going to really ruin your gameplay. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is the absolutely beautiful world building. As we can tell, these open environments look gorgeous, and I'm really excited to see whether we have free roam in this, whether we can actually just go out and explore. I hope so, and I imagine to some extent there will be. This looks mental, and I would love to just go and have a little stroll around and see what this environment has to offer. Now, my favorite part is that stealth is back. So Mafia 3, for the flaws it did have, the biggest thing it had going for it was the different ways that you can actually engage in gameplay, whether you want to go in loud and proud or whether you want to be stealthy. That's one of the features that for example, with games like Mind's Eye, I was gutted about. There was no different ways to tackle missions, and in Mafia: The Old Country, we're going to have some really stealthy options. And very quickly, I just want to go through some of the stuff that they're either bringing back or that they've changed. So we can loot bodies and drag bodies across the ground. We can throw coins to distract enemies. And obviously in Mafia 3, we were able to whistle to distract enemies, but we can throw coins as a new distraction method. We can also sharpen knives. So our knives aren't like invincible. We can't just keep using them. We have to sharpen them. And that plays into the mechanic of how well that knife works. We can also throw the knife as well as use the knife. And even when it comes to the gunplay and different ways to interact with enemies, we have so many different options for takedowns, and it actually feels like a game where you could replay this mission many different times and have different ways to actually tackle it, whether it's the stealthy approach, whether you want to go in with guns blazing. It feels like a really well-rounded gameplay experience. Something else that's really cool is if you want to heal yourself, you can actually bandage your arm, and Enzo's arm actually remains bandaged, which is pretty cool. Now, there is some stuff that I want to talk about, some of the negative stuff. Now, it's not massively negative, and this is me nitpicking, because overall, this does look really incredible. So the one thing I do want to point out is that like the quality drop from cutscenes to gameplay is very noticeable. The cutscenes look absolutely gorgeous, and the gameplay, by the way, does look honestly mint. Like I have no actual complaints from a gameplay perspective and a visual perspective, but the dropout is definitely there. This kind of feels like a way more polished version of the definitive version of Mafia 3. That's the way that I'm going to kind of put this. I understand that can come across as being a bit negative. I just think that maybe they could push a bit more out of PCs or current gen consoles, especially the Pro models. But that's, of course, yet to be seen. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that they're using a lot of the animation style, like the animation language from Mafia 3. Now, that's not a complaint, because I don't think anything was wrong with the gameplay in Mafia 3, the way that we interacted with our enemies. But it's very clear that this kind of feels a bit like a stiff animation system, not 100% perfect, which is fine. I guess it's the gameplay style that they're going for. It just would have been, like, in my opinion, pretty cool to see a whole revamped kind of like walking animation and movement animation. And something else I noticed, that there's no mini-map when driving from one location to another. Now, I'm not sure whether they've just turned it off in the settings to not like spoil the locations. I would fully understand that. I'm not 100% sure what the reasoning behind that is, and there's probably a logical explanation that I've entirely missed. You guys can let me know down in the comments if you think there will be a mini-map or not. And the other thing was that some things look a little bit clunky, like when he grabs the guns from the table, they just kind of spawn into his hand. That being said, I would probably have the same complaint if you had to wait for an animation to finish every single time he picked up a weapon or picked up something. So I guess I'm once again, I'm nitpicking here. I reckon I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. But yeah, to round off this video and to round off my conclusive final thoughts, I'm genuinely stoked to see this game. I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And of course, when it comes out, I'll be doing a full playthrough on the channel. I'll be covering all of the information but I can. And what's really weird is this game actually hasn't had that much marketing. It hasn't had an extensive marketing cycle, which for a game that's under the Take-Two umbrella, it's quite surprising. I imagine they're going to ramp up marketing in the next week or two. I mean, this trailer already had its problems on launch. It was originally dropped by IGN, and IGN dropped it in an absolutely awful compression. Everything was wrong about the way that IGN dropped it. Now, Mafia themselves have actually posted the trailer, and that's the one that you're seeing right now, which looks beautiful. But I'm really interested to see how marketing ramps up for this game. I'm absolutely stoked to jump into some gameplay on this, and hopefully you guys are too. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Hey. Emotional trauma with a prima donna gasping when she see the commas, laughing to conceal the monsters. I feel like Kanye when he lost his Donda. When my father left me, you were there to heal the pain I conquered. I never pay you back for what that meant to me. Some scars just fade physically, but never leave mentally. It's where people